The name's Torah do, Messianic Torah do. And this week's Torah portion is Shelach.
Shelach, or send for yourself, comes to us from Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 through chapter 15, verse 41. And this week's Torah portion begins with spies being sent to search out the promised land. Basically, they're being sent to find out two things. Is this a good land? And are the people who live in this land tough? Are they dangerous people? Should we be afraid of them? So in Numbers chapter 13, starting in verse 17 through 20, it says, Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said to them, Go up into the Negeb, and go into the hill country, and see what the land is, and whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and whether the land that they dwell in is good or bad, and whether the cities that they dwell in are camps or strongholds. The reason it's phrased like this, see if they dwell in camps or strongholds, is because how somebody dwells in that way kind of is a reflection of whether or not they're strong, whether or not they think that they can handle themselves in a fight.
Yes, you see, strong people don't live in strongholds. They live in camps because they know that anyone who dares attack them will feel either the wrath of their might or the might of their wrath.
So Numbers chapter 13, starting in verse 25, gives us the report of the spies. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people in Israel, the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh, and they brought back word to them and said to the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, We came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negeb, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the Jordan. So they come back, and their report is, yes, this is an exceedingly good land. There is a lot of produce. This is very fertile land that is going to sustain us. But the people who live in this land already are strong warriors. These are warring nations. These are nations known for their ability to fight and their ability to conquer. Now, even though the people of the land were tough and they were dangerous, Joshua and Caleb believed that the Lord would keep his word and do what he had promised. Here in Numbers chapter 13, starting in verse 30, But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, Let us go up at once and occupy the land, for we are to overcome it. Then the men who had gone up with him said, We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Now Caleb was the first one to speak up, and later Joshua joined him. There were 12 spies. 2 said, The land is exceedingly good, and we need to trust that the Lord will do what he promised to do. And 10 said, No, these people are too tough. These people are too powerful for us to overthrow. Now, in the end, the people listened to the bad report and were punished by being forced to wander in the desert for 40 years. But they didn't have to listen. Just because there were 10 saying one thing doesn't mean that the 2 saying the other thing are wrong. Sometimes it's just one voice or just 2 voices saying to do what's right. The big mistake that the people of Israel made here was who they decided to listen to. They decided to listen to the people saying, don't trust in the Lord. They decided to listen to the people who were feeding their doubt. Now we have a million voices coming at us every day. You have TV, you have radio, you have different voices on the internet. You have all of this stuff. And sometimes it's tough to know who to listen to. Sometimes people you think you can trust, you aren't sure whether or not you should listen to them. So I thought I would come up with a list of 5 ways that we can help ourselves to know who to listen to. Number 1, know the Scripture. We refer to the accepted books of Scripture as the canon of Scripture, and that comes from the Greek word canon. Yeah, and that Greek word canon means a measuring rod. Scripture is the ultimate measurement of truth. If somebody's telling us something and it doesn't align up with what we're reading in the Scriptures, we know that's something that we shouldn't be listening to. We know that's something false. In Acts chapter 17, verse 11, it talks about how the Bereans were more noble in character than the Corinthians, because the Bereans listened to what Rav Shaul was saying, but then they held it up against Scripture and they said, how does this match up with what I already know that the Lord has said? You see, we know for a fact that the Lord is unchanging. The Lord doesn't believe one thing one day and then believe another thing another day. The Lord doesn't tell us one thing one day and then tell us the opposite the next day. So when we hold up the Lord's Word, we know we have an ultimate measure of truth. Number 2, don't look for exclusive or secret knowledge. One of the things that the Torah teaches us is that the Word of the Lord is not something that's far away from us. It's not something that's up in the heavens so that we have to go get it. It's not something that's down below the earth so we have to dig it up. If somebody comes to you promising some super secret knowledge that had not been revealed, that should really raise your defenses. Number 3, don't assume you're always right. Don't assume that what you've heard all your life is the proper interpretation of Scripture. There are 3 kinds of theology. There's right theology and there's wrong theology. And your theology should be constantly moving from the wrong to the right. Our beliefs about the Lord should always be growing and molding in order to fit Scripture. Number 4, the Lord's truth isn't always comforting. The first example I think of is the story of Nathan the prophet confronting King David. But sometimes the Lord will tell us a truth that we don't always want to hear. In Timothy, it talks about people falling away from the truth, wanting to have what their ears are itching for. Sometimes if it sounds too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. Number 5, the truth will always come down to trust the Lord and obey the Lord. No matter what, if something or someone is saying, well, you don't have to obey the Lord, you shouldn't obey the Lord, you know immediately that that is false. You know immediately that that's something you shouldn't listen to. Because trusting and obeying the Lord should be the beginning of what we look at as truth. So what are some other ways that we can determine what is true and what isn't? What are some other ways we can practice good discernment? Let me know in the comments, and if we gave you a laugh, give us a like, and if you learned something, give us a share. I'm the Messianic Torah Dude. Shalom, and stay in the Word.